What's up everybody, Richard here from RC Workbench, and in our last video we compared the Fusion setup to our tried and true 1080 HobbyWing combo, and basically we wanted to torture it to see what we could put it through, and it passed with flying colors. So immediately we noticed that on the SCX10III here, the Fusion ran much faster than it did on the Wraith, and obviously much faster than my capper here, since my capper is running a 55 turned Axial motor. If you watch the video, which is right up here on the top right hand side, you will see that the brush motor actually had a bit of an issue at the end of the video, but it was able to continue on. And I honestly don't think it was the brushed motor, I think it was the servo was shorting out since it wasn't waterproof. It's hard to say. And the second most obvious thing that you're going to see here, as the SCX10III crawls over all this stuff, the really cool thing about crawling with the Fusion, you get much more consistent power distribution. Now when you watch my capper here, you can see how I'm constantly having to adjust the throttle versus the Fusion where, you know, you just keep the throttle in one position and it's going to apply that no matter what kind of resistance you're getting over the terrain. And as my buddy Troy over at Roadside RC said, you know, that makes for some really great footage. Very consistent, very smooth, but may not be your cup of tea. So the SCX10III and the Capra both share pretty much the same axles of the type portals. The Capra is a bit wider, and you know, there are other differences between the two, obviously suspension geometry and such, but we'll get into that more later. The point of this video is to compare brushed versus brushless. Right there you can see, you know, the consistency in the throttle. You know, as soon as I went down the hill in that Capra, it just kind of dropped immediately. The throttle rate did not remain consistent.
You matter what? Told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what? Told you I'ma do me, why you hating on me? It's not adding up. Told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what? Told you I'ma do me, why you hating on me? It's not adding up.
So right here you're going to see a big difference between the two and the way they handle and with the motors. So both trucks are actually running the exact same tires, the exact same foam. The only difference is that the Capra has the heavier wheels, so it stays a little bit more planted, and you're going to see a big difference here between the two trucks and the way that they can handle and tackle objects like this.
You need to come around to the left to the edge.
The smooth, consistent power rate of the brushless motor here really helped it get up this final stage here.
Oh, this thing finally impressed me.
The Capra's going to have some issues with the wheels getting bound up, and once I finally get it to the proper position to be able to climb this rock, the inconsistent throttle response, you know, basically the more resistance you put on the tires, the more you have to pull the trigger. Then all of a sudden you have a surplus of power going to the wheels and you overshoot stuff, versus the brushless motor where it just stays consistent no matter where you put the trigger at.
Same tires, how come mine are just sliding everywhere?
Because yours are soaking wet.
I doubt that it was because they were wet. We both just went through the same amount of water. The only difference I can think of is that the heavier wheels basically didn't allow me to bounce anywhere, kept me firmly planted into that rock. Plus my tires seem to be covered in a lot more gravel than his, I'm not sure why. You know, my last video that I had the Capra in, I was showing all of its strengths basically. And when we run down double rock here, every weakness is going to be exploited by any truck you run. And I'm going to point them out here with the Capra. And this is the first one, not having a front bumper. Doesn't sound like an issue, but it can be. So because I didn't have that front bumper, I couldn't take the exact same line as the SCX10III.
I don't have the bumper to scoop me up.
No, I was going to say.
Kind of screwed with that.
You know, typically your strengths can also be your weakness, and this right here shows that. SCX10III gets bound up on its bumper right here.
See, if that was a real Jeep, it would have been total.
This area that we run in is going to exploit every weakness of any crawler you run. We already know that the Fusion can take the water. You can see here how the SCX10III wants to tip over a lot, and it's actually going to tip over at the end of this run here. You can see how my wheels get bound up a lot with the capper.
This is what I'm talking about. You get these tires stuck. And
Yeah, because there's no body to keep it from falling in.
yeah, and you're...
But not having that front bumper allows me to do this versus the SCX10III. So I learned very quickly that I could take some of the same lines as the SCX10III, but not all of them, and vice versa. There's a lot of lines that I can do with the capper that the SCX10III just cannot do either. But again, this video is mainly to compare the two motors, the brush versus the brushless. And to be fair, really the only difference is that throttle consistency, which you can turn off if you want to. But my opinion is, why would you want to? I mean, it's really nice.
What's Devin Talbot say? Flooded.
If you like what we do here at RC Workbench, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share the videos, and leave me a comment down below.
That was a doozy. You gotta throttle it right there. It's gonna drop.
So now that I've pointed out the major difference between the two, you should be able to see in the rest of the video exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to see the capper descend down obstacles very fast versus the brushless setup in the SCX10III, which will crawl down them much slower, smoother, and more consistently. You're also going to see some other differences here in suspension geometry. For example, the capper skid plate likes to get hung up a lot. You know, I haven't looked at the wheelbase difference between the two, but it seems like the capper's a bit longer. It gets hung up in the center a lot more. You know, and the reason that you get a lot more articulation in the capper versus the SCX10III is that skid plate that I keep getting hung up on.
It's also wider, so it's like I can't take the exact same lines you take.
The suspension links are much closer together. The top ones form more of a triangle point versus the SCX10III and the SCX10II for that matter, which allows your axles to swing up and down much more. That's how you get some crazy articulation like you see here.
I still like to have a 10 too. I really like the 10 too.
But because of those differences in geometry, you know, you can't take the exact same lines. Plus the capper's wider, and without the body to protect those wheels from getting bound up, you find yourself in trouble very fast, very easily. Your best bet is to try to go over stuff versus try to go and squeeze through it like you would a regular crawler.
It's like I try to take the exact same lines and it just messes me up. It's like you have to take different lines with the capper altogether.
So don't think if you've watched any of my videos, if you go out and get yourself a Capra, you're gonna all of a sudden be king of the off-road. It's kind of a learning curve compared to your typical crawler. But once you figure it out, there's really not a lot you can't do. I mean, look right there. Look at that axle flex. That's just insane.
See where to go from here.
Nowhere, except maybe across and down that way, but not even. That's a bumper crusher.
Oh, I was going for it. Figured that brushless power, you know, give me a nice little basher launch.
Oh, I think I might cut these.
Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share the video, leave me a comment below, and don't forget to smash that bell. And I'll catch you on the next one. Ah, famous last words. I think I might just cut through there. Yeah, that water was pretty deep, and I do start to run into issues with the Capra. Make sure you hit that notification bell, and you'll know when I have the next video up, and you'll see what those issues were. Is it the motor? You'll find out.
You have the blue save box in that one?
Yeah.
The high speed?
I think so.
You got to turn up to 7.4?
I don't know. Capra's getting wet.